This is a story of belief, of an eastern trail blazed past the western sun's haze, of growing larger, going farther, glowing brighter, moving fearlessly in the face of conventional wisdom. Global aspirations were realized. Soon the whole sky was lit. A billion new paths illuminated. Brilliant new entities innovated as InMobi continues to disrupt the status quo. The world looks up in anticipation. With a bold ambition to shape the future, we discover new opportunities. We imagine solutions to big problems. Our belief guides our ambition. Our passion fuels our growth, propelling us to reimagine the possibilities. We see the future. We are InMobi.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome on stage Mr. Naveen Tiwari, founder and CEO of InMobi.
Wow. You know, I've done this many times, but I don't think I've ever been so emotional on stage. You know, it's like going for a wedding, right? Your own wedding, and you invite a lot of people for your own wedding, and suddenly the whole family appears. You know, when we decided to do this event, we realized that, look, we want to invite few people over, and you know, hopefully it'll be a great event to showcase to the world what we are all about. And we thought few people will come over. We are absolutely bowled over with all of you coming over here today. It's just an absolute pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much. You know, InMobi, we've been around for about 7 years. And a large part of what we do has been about trying to build a business where we have tried to push the boundaries for what we think is tough to do. You know, we've been in the business of, mobile advertising. And we thought, and we think that we are doing quite well in that. Over the last 7 years, we have grown ourselves across multiple countries, multiple markets, scaled ourselves quite high. Pretty happy with it. But I think one of the biggest proud moments for us was the fact that, when a couple of weeks ago, and I'm pretty sure some of you might have seen that in the media, when we went and launched in the US. And the reason why it was big, because 7 years ago, when we started the company, the idea and the thought was to say, hey, I think there is a Silicon Valley in India. And that in the Silicon Valley is not the place in this case, it's the mindset. And we believed that there is a Silicon Valley in India, and we truly believed in that. I think 2 weeks ago when we showcased this to the world in Silicon Valley, it gave me immense pride, because for the first time I thought that the Silicon Valley of India went to the Silicon Valley of the world to showcase to them that we can actually do things which are significantly ahead of the curve and significantly disruptive. And gave me immense pride, because everything that we presented to them was done out of Bangalore. Today, a large part of what we are thinking of doing, a large part of what we are essentially talking about, is trying to reimagine a mobile-first India. Trying to reimagine an India where the only thing we care about is mobile. And so the only thing we actually go forward and we need to essentially disrupt has to be something in the lines of mobile. Not just that, I think we are also sitting on a very unique opportunity in India when it comes to mobile, because there are not many countries out there that will have such significant and miraculous growth as what we will have over the next 5 years when it comes to mobile. And our hope today is to essentially showcase our reimagination for India, for a mobile-first India, our reimagination for what we think is a unique opportunity in India and how we think we can help capture that opportunity for all of you guys out here. As I said, we've been in the business of advertising for many years. And actually, truly speaking, advertising is a pretty large space. It's something, somewhere $600 billion worth of industry that exists in advertising today globally. But one of the challenges that a lot of us face when it comes to advertising is, whether it's print advertising, whether it's television advertising, whether it's radio advertising, any form of advertising, including mobile advertising, by the way. One of our biggest challenges has always been we don't like it. We don't enjoy that advertising. In fact, we somewhere hate that advertising. An industry which is as large as $600 billion and growing, by the way, massively growing, somewhere it doesn't add up when that large industry is not liked by users, and it pained us because we were very excited about what we do. Yeah, we are very excited and proud about mobile advertising, but the fact that if we cannot get users to love advertising, to like advertising, something is broken in this whole equation. And so that became the central theme of a lot of our discussions, a lot of our conversations about a couple of years ago. And that led us to ask some big questions. It led us to essentially go deeper and try to figure out what's the core purpose of advertising. Some of you might look at it and say, well, it's the annoying piece which we all have to deal with. It's the necessary evil in the room. Well, somebody very nicely put it to me. And he said, advertising is a beautiful medium. And we actually totally believe in that. It's a beautiful medium which allows consumers to discover new things, new services, new products. It's the only medium which basically tells you what's new out there. But somewhere along the path, somewhere as this industry grew from whatever it was to $600 billion, the industry lost its path. It became a race of who can be louder. How can I make my message to be louder than the next one's message? And therefore, we somewhere missed the core purpose, that if the core purpose of advertising was to essentially help consumers discover, we weren't doing it. At the same time, when it comes to mobile, people on mobile and in our current world today are really evolved, by the way. The advertising used to be what it used to be 15 years ago. We didn't change it because 15 years ago, people had very limited information. Today, that's not the case. Today, each one of us sitting in this room are very informative. Very, very informative. We also have evolved users because today, when as a consumer, you look at anything, we have so much data, so much abundance of data that we have access to at any point of time, that as consumers, we have become used to snacking information. We snack information every few seconds. But the amount of snacking we have to do, we have to be ultra efficient. Like we have all become ultra efficient. We will look at something and in 3 seconds make a decision whether we want to go deeper into that or not. All of us. We have no time to waste because we have so much to consume. Now, as all of us have evolved, and all of these devices that we handle in our own hands, they have also evolved. The thing which certainly evolved with it was content. If you look at content, boom, 3 seconds later, I can go to the next one. 5 seconds later, the next one, and I can be going through this. Somewhere in this path, advertising didn't stay caught up. It fell behind. It wasn't fast enough to essentially say, okay, if the consumer habits have become of snacking, if the consumer essentially likes to, take information in small bites and is very, very ultra efficient and ultra careful about his time and is very informative, how has advertising to evolve? And that essentially led us to reimagine advertising. And as we reimagined advertising, we actually imagined loving advertising. We put a bold thing in front of us. We said, look, no more. We will have people come and tell us that they don't like advertising. We will not take that as a statement. And so therefore today, we are announcing the launch of our platform, which is called Meep. And I'll talk about this today. And the reason I want to talk about this platform and the launch of this platform is because I think it's fundamentally revolutionary in the way it looks at advertising. It fundamentally transforms advertising into moments of discovery for consumers. Go back to the core purpose of advertising that we talked about to begin with. The core purpose of advertising to begin with was, hey, how do I let consumers discover new things? So let's take it back all the way to the primitive world. It's actually pretty simple. A lot of us question for ourselves about a month to say, hey, isn't this too simple? Like, we are just saying, hey, let's just get consumers to discover things. Like, what are we talking about? Where have we missed the big picture here? We actually didn't miss the big picture. I think the big thing that we did was, in all of this, we put the user at the center of advertising. Till date, a large part of advertising that we all cater to and looked at was all about the advertiser's messages. If you pay me more, I'll put you up. If you pay me even more, I will put you even up. And we lived that world. But somewhere today, as we launch Meep, we are saying that's not what's going to happen anymore. It's not. What we are going to do is to essentially put the user and say, hey, does this user need your information? And if he does not, we will say no to it. And that's a big statement because the advertising world never worked this way. And we are calling out that the new world where consumer is far more powerful than the systems and the platforms, the new world, the new order of the world requires the user to control what he sees and doesn't see. And therefore, we are putting the user at the center of all of this. So what does it do? What is Meep expected to do? It is expected to create these discovery zones where consumers can discover amazing products. It's going to be as simple as that. Why don't I show you a demo which will actually bring it to life? And by the way, given who we are going to create these amazing experiences not as an app, but we're going to create these amazing experiences of discovery across thousands and thousands of apps that work with us, that we have partnered with. As InMobi, we don't have a single app of our own. But we have partnerships with 40,000 applications. So we're going to go into those applications and create these beautiful experiences as we go along. So let me show you what this looks like, and hopefully you like it. Let's try to build out a seamless discovery experience on mobile. Let's look at this, this application that the user is in. It's one of our partner applications. The consumer is in that application. Consumer starts to surf through that application. As he's surfing through that application, it creates a discovery zone. As it creates this discovery zone, as you can see here, this is created very contextually. This is created based on the fact that we knew the consumer's context, and we knew what the consumer was, what's the consumer's history looks like to a certain extent. And the consumer is expected to now essentially go through a discovery experience on that. So as he goes through this discovery experience, it creates on the fly, pulls on the fly products that it predicts that should be right fit for this consumer. And it continues to bring these products as the consumer goes through this discovery experience. So what happened here? We moved away from the world where the only advertising we wanted to do was that of Zalora and say, hey, Zalora is great and you should go for it. Instead, we pushed it to the next level and said, hey, Zalora is great, but let me not show you 100,000 products of Zalora or 1 million products from Zalora, but let me show you the 10, 15 products that we think are the right fit products for you. They're exactly the one that are in the context of the app, plus are the right ones for you. Let me show you one more example. Let me show you the example, because all of this, by the way, what we just did, is equivalent of creating, window shopping. Window shopping is the experience, is the most primitive form of discovery. And this is what you're doing. You're creating window shopping experiences inside application. So as you look at this, this news application, and the consumer essentially goes into this news application, the consumer, in this case, seems to be a lot more tech-oriented person. As he looks at this, a Meep zone gets created automatically based on this consumer's expectation and his liking. And as you look at this, and the consumer essentially goes deeper into that, it pulls out, again, real time. It pulls out products from our partners, multiple partners, puts them together, the headphones that the consumer might want, or the speakers that we think are the best speakers for that profile of the consumer, all of them being created on the fly. Same thing is true for the wearables. What happened here? And not just this, by the way, as he goes a little more, all of these are being pulled from various different customers of ours. As you go to the next level, not just this, not just that you see the products, you can also go deeper into the products. And you can actually understand the depth of these products at crazy levels. So it's, and all of this, by the way, again, just to be clear, is happening on third-party applications. These window shopping experiences are getting created on the fly, absolutely for the consumer, and the consumer can go through the complete experiences without leaving the environment. So what happened here? What did we just do? If I were to talk about take you slightly into the back end of this, we have essentially been in the process for the last couple of years indexing the world. We have indexed the world, and we've indexed them into small cards. And we have deep linked those cards back into our system. All of that indexing of all the products across various different partners of ours are essentially at our disposal. A consumer, as you saw from my earlier chart, the consumer, we see about 1.2 billion consumers, give and take, across the globe. We see those 1.2 billion users, consumers, roughly about 6 to 10 times a day. When we see them 6 to 10 times a day, I cannot keep showing them, what people are paying me for. I need to show them what they want to see, because this is too much. You cannot show people when the scale increases, when the number of exposure with consumers increase, you got to show them something. And so therefore, whatever we have at the back end essentially get projected to them right in front of them. Today, we probably have indexed roughly about 100 million products and services that we have access to showcase to consumers across the globe. But every one of those consumer experiences are very closely monitored and curated. This was good, but that didn't satisfy a lot of our engineers out there. And so we do have a crazy set of engineers, and I just want to say hi to all of them, I think, who are watching us live in our offices right now. We were hoping to get them in here, but you guys took the space, so I had to get them, create a live feed for them here and outside. But for all of our crazy people out there that we have in our offices, they said that, look, this user experience is good, but it's not up there. We want to push that further. Discovery is good, but it sounds like you're forcing even forcing the discovery to happen. What if we were able to do, what is it that allows us to do discoveries significantly better? And again, when we talked about that, we went all the way back into the history. And we went back into the history, we said, look, the most important things that we remember in our life are things when there are stories. We all have grown up with our grandparents telling us stories. We remember those stories for a long period of time. Advertising forces things on you. It doesn't tell you a story. It tries to tell you a story, but a story which somebody else wants to tell, not a story that you want to listen to. You always want to talk to your grandmother. She didn't force a story down on you. You asked for a story. So let's actually go down that path and essentially say, hey, how can I improve, reimagine the user experience again, and imagine that user experience of discovery as stories. So what happened here? We essentially evolved Meep to tell stories in an automated manner, in a scalable manner. Let me show you the example of this so that I can bring out the power of narratives, the power of stories in today's world. If you look at this experience here, it's an application called Click, and the consumer essentially goes through into this application. I'm just going to go back and come back on this because I think I moved fast. So if you look at this application again, it has, a consumer essentially is going through this. What we know about this consumer is that he's a Game of Thrones fan, and so what it is saying is winter is coming, and so are the White Walkers. But that narrative and that story for somebody who is a Game of Thrones fan essentially gets pulled from various different partners of ours. If you look here, there is a feed that's pulled from BuzzFeed. If you go further, there are movie clips that are pulled up for the consumer. You can in fact play the movie clip, understand what this clip is all about.
There is only one God, and his name is death. And there is only one thing we say to death.
You can go further. Again, you can start reading articles about that. All of them, again, the movie clip, the article, everything is pulled in real time because you were expected to be a Game of Thrones fan. You can look at products that are specific to Game of Thrones. You could look at those products. You could get, and all of these are pulled from different partners in real time because they are indexed with us. If you really are interested in looking at some specific product, you could in fact go ahead and explore that more deeply. So this is what Meep does for consumers. In effect, it's an attempt from us to move advertising to a level where consumers' every experience of advertising has huge value that the consumer can actually take. And converted every one of these experiences into these discovery experiences. We have tested this out over 5 million consumers in the last 9 months, maybe 10 months. For the last 9 to 10 months, we've tested this out, and the results that we've gotten are almost 6 to 7 times better than the results that we were getting when we were doing the traditional advertising models. Not just this, we in fact showed it to consumers and did a lot of discussions with them to say, hey, why did you find this better? And the whole idea of advertising taking an evolution of this nature was really, really powerful from a consumer point of view. But all of you sitting out here, you also have in addition to you being consumers, you also have a role in here. And that's why I want to share what does this mean for every one of you who are sitting here, because every one of you run a business, invest in a business, are creating a business, which requires to be in front of consumers. So what does this mean for each one of you? Let's talk about, what does Meep for Commerce mean? Like how do we work with all of our commerce partners who have a lot of these products to sell, mostly physical products, but also digital products? The way we look at Meep for Commerce, we have a very interesting way of looking at it. The commerce evolution has obviously happened. There is e-commerce, and then there was an evolution, and there was m-commerce. And as you go further, what this creates is what we call discovery commerce. This platform, Meep, essentially creates probably one of the largest platforms for discovery commerce in the world within the next 3 months. Let me talk about why discovery commerce is that powerful. All of us go for shopping. right? And we have two kinds of shopping behaviors. We can either do intent shopping. I want to buy milk, I want to buy a certain specific phone, I want to buy a certain specific product. That's intent shopping. But intent shopping, all of us go to malls, right? When you go into a mall, we go to buy one product, we come out with 2 bags full. Why does that happen? Because you've certainly gone through this whole experience of discovery, because all of these malls and the shops inside them are built and set up for you to discover new products. So therefore, as you go across this world, there is intent shopping that you do, but a much larger amount of discovery shopping is where you spend your time. And so therefore, and by the way, mobile platform is not built for discovery at all. Even search is broken. So mobile platforms are completely not built for discovery. They are largely built for intent. And what Meep is essentially doing, it is enabling window shopping experiences, creating these window shopping experiences distributed across thousands and thousands of applications. Every one of our partners, app developer partner, will be able to create these Meep experiences, these discovery experiences, and be able to essentially have these window shopping experiences where you could do distributed commerce or discovery commerce. And in India, within the next 3 months or so, this discovery commerce experience would be in front of about 120 million consumers. So 120 million consumers would be able to participate in d-commerce. And we think it's actually massive. And if that didn't help you get the scale of this, what that would mean is that it would create roughly about, give and take, about 5 billion shopping sessions within the next 3 months on a monthly basis across these 120 billion consumers. In all of this, if you think about that, the mobile platform of today is very strongly built for what we call an intent. The apps are built for intent. You have at max about 30 to 60 applications on your phone, and you will go inside those applications only when you have the intent of using them. But somewhere, intent shopping, intent-led shopping limits the number of products that you can discover. There is a limitation to it. And we think, over the next few years, over the next couple of years, the intent-led shopping would obviously scale because consumers would learn. But what we think, what Meep would do, is it would probably lead to a significantly higher amount of discovery that can actually happen on each one of those across the country, by the way, for sure. And so there are a number of products that will get discovered because of Meep, and because of the discovery experiences that it will create, would actually lead to roughly about 4 to 5 times of total number of products that will get discovered through intent. Today, if you think about from a commerce perspective, almost all our current transactions are intent-driven, almost all of them. And what we think, if we were to essentially extrapolate that a little further, our aim, because of the massive amount of increased discovery that's happening, we believe that Meep would roughly contribute to about would be enabling roughly about 50% of the commerce transactions in the world, in the country. I'm sticking to India for now. And to us, that's the power of this. So on one hand, the increased power of discovery would potentially lead to a far higher scale that all of our partners, commerce partners, so a bunch of them are out here, will be able to essentially gain from that. And so to us, that's like the big thing. Today, we are also announcing, and so by the way, just to summarize that, so I think at some level, from a commerce perspective, the discovery commerce is the next frontier of commerce. It's also the next frontier, especially on mobile, because discovery is completely broken. And we think, we do have a solution here which can transform that experience completely. And in that, we have today announcing a partnership with Amazon India, who is our launch partner here, who is using Meep to drive next generation of mobile commerce. And we think it's going to be phenomenal because the amount of product discovery and the products that exist inside big platforms like Amazon are a lot. I don't know the exact number, but I wouldn't be surprised if it is of the order of 15 to 20 million. And in order to essentially get those 15 to 20 million products discovered, we think Meep will play a very, very powerful role here. Let me show you an example of how the Amazon experience would effectively work. So if you look here, it's a social application that a consumer is part of. In this social application, we had two options. One was to essentially put an Amazon advertising here and to drive Amazon to Amazon's app. The other is, which would lead to intent shopping if that were the case. But in this case here, as the consumer essentially looks at this, this application, we clearly know he or she is interested in, food. And what it creates a Meep discovery zone which has a lot of products, kitchen products, that were pulled together by being inside Amazon. And those products were pulled together here specifically for this user. And the consumer can essentially go through the experience of discovering these products. And as the consumer essentially goes through looking at variety of these products, he essentially will find few things that he or she may like. And that's largely, and by the way, when you find something which is interesting, you could go to the next level and figure out if there is something more powerful within that. Now, none of these things, the whole discovery commerce experience, which we just did with Amazon, is not complete till you're able to blur the lines between point of discovery and point of purchase. Mobile platform and these devices are making this very simple. Let me take you to the earlier world. The earlier world used to be, we see an advertising, 3 to 4 weeks later, we'd walk into a store. When we walk into that store 3 to 4 weeks later, we might remember that we wanted that product which we saw. And then you will complete the transaction. The world's gone. That's not the world we want to live in. If I see something, I want it. That's the new world. That's the new consumer. I see it, I want it. And therefore, advertising and commerce are coming far more together. And that's what Meep essentially tries to do. And so therefore, in order for us to blur the line between point of discovery and point of purchase, we need to power these purchases on Meep. And so today, we are announcing one more partnership, a massive partnership, where we are launching the buy button on Meep, which is powered by Paytm. And Vijay is here, and I'm going to request him eventually to come on stage and talk about the partnership. But the idea is very simple, is to say, look, let's make the experience for consumer seamless. Let me show you how it works, by the way, before I call Vijay on stage. If you look at this entertainment app, where a consumer is essentially going through this entertainment experience, a Meep zone is created here, which is very native to the application. As the consumer kind of goes deeper into that experience, it creates this window shopping experience, which is again built real time, very, very targeted, very, very specific to that consumer. And that consumer essentially starts to look at these various products. Again, they're all pulled from various partners of ours. Let's say the individual likes this specific product, likes this dress, which I have no idea why it's called lace panel gown, but it is okay. I think it's nice. And so I want to really go deeper into that and explore that dress. And I kind of get in and I look at it from various different angles, and I think I like it. It's certainly not in my budget because it's 14,000, but I'm pretty sure Vijay can afford it. So Vijay kind of goes, I don't think your size is M, but you kind of go deeper into that. and you put in all the details. Clearly seems somebody from my family is doing this because the last name was Tiwari, but you kind of put all of these details in it, and you go through that experience, and you can use the wallet to essentially make that experience, and you're done. That's it. And you have to do this for, all this extra details that you put, you just have to do it once. Because every other Meep experience and the payment experience on top of it is going to be one-click checkout. And that's the power of all of these Meep experiences, because you're making discovery commerce seamless with single-click checkout. Actually now I want to invite my dear friend Vijay on stage and talk about this and what it means in general for him. Vijay, can we have you on stage, please?
Hi. When I landed here, I had an expectation that our friend Naveen is doing something incredible, but the truth of matter is that I did not know it is this incredible. And I have to talk about a story now. I have my investors in Alibaba, Alipay, and they are China's commerce guys. And now, for every big guy, there is a super challenger who's super smart and street smart and can kill them if they miss something, correct? And they have a challenger in Kudai. And that guy is a Tencent guy, right? So the opportunity for this small little commerce company was that they got millions of people to create shopping channels like these products that we saw. And they had to complete the payment cycle, and they used TenPay. The next most important challenge for them was, how do they tell consumer come to my app if there is a destination to come? Because by default, people were going to Taobao and they were completing the transaction. And today, when I'm seeing this, man, Naveen, I can't believe it, This is exactly what WeChat plus Kudai is happening in China, actually. This is incredible. And I mean it. I was like in a moment of discovery for me that this was needed in this country, and if it happens, like what you're saying, 5 billion shopping sessions at a conversion of like a 0.1% or a 1%, we're talking about like millions of carts getting checked out at a like an hourly basis that I'm talking about. It's incredible, man. There are cheers for Naveen and his team to do this, actually. It takes a lot to rethink like this. It takes a lot for thinking that how would you take your advertising business to a level which is like way ahead of anything that has been built earlier. So first of all, honored and grateful of the team for inviting us here and becoming the partner for the Meep platform. Now what you saw is what will happen in this country. Paytm, or as many other commerce companies are helping now today's millions of merchants. And today there are in tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands. And soon you would expect like everybody in nook and corner would be able to sell, and they would want to sell. The problem would be, how do they discover the product? How do people like you and me discover the product? And by the way, I want to tell you the example of the product that when I was talking to a potential investor and he was quoting me the example of Kudai. You know what sells on Kudai? An apartment where somebody has got fruits, a banana which you want in afternoon for your kid is sold on Kudai, and you are able to buy on the spot because you are able to discover it. Now, if you are browsing and a Meep zone is created and it discovers that product, and then you can check out, you saw the seamless checkout that happened and you saw the shopping that happened. It is incredible. Paytm today, and okay, I'll not quote today's number, so let me just say potentially 80 million users of wallet. And these people have one or other time transacted on Paytm. Wallet got created because they added money and they transacted with that. This is an extraordinary number when I see this in this country. This 80 million customers and 120 million that I'm seeing the discovery consumers, basically our problem as a platform and merchants' problem effectively as a platform has been, how do I go in front of consumer in a more discoverable fashion that consumer finds it and figures out and checks out and pays for the good that I'm trying to sell. And now, with this kind of platform, which is as ubiquitous as like 120 million Indian consumers and on the apps that you're talking about and everywhere inventory. So unlike you open an app, shopping everywhere, it's ubiquitous. I'm not able to say with the equal excitement that I'm right now hearing this, because I can tell you this is incredible if it happens, because this is the kind of stuff that one point in time Facebook wants to use its feed to shop. This is the kind of stuff WeChat uses its feeds to shop. this is the kind of stuff we dream to create, that one day we will be as ubiquitous that anywhere we can sell. And Naveen, you've done it. I think if it is happening really as I'm seeing it as a demo, it's way too incredible. Now, with the Paytm button on 100 million users that we have and 120 million users, okay, so you got two numbers updated. 100 million wallet users that we have, we actually have 35 million of them who have shopped, and every month about 30 to 35 million are active customer base who are shopping and checking out. So one of you who has done a transaction, single click and out, you saw how incredible checkout experience can be, classic Uber style. I mean, there you don't even say that I have to check out. They just take the money. But in the case of here, you can single click and check out. This will be amazing, man. Kudos to the team, incredible, extraordinary, and if it is happening, it is changing the face, not of advertising, but of the commerce, I can tell you that. Cheers.
You know, I think Vijay touched on this very interestingly. The idea of this platform is to essentially allow every merchant to have their products discovered. You know, you don't need to have billions of dollars to essentially spend on marketing in order to essentially get your products discovered. If you have a cool product, if you have a great product, we will ensure that it is in front of the consumers. So if you are, you know, as the example suggested, if somebody is, you know, selling amazing bananas from an apartment, we should be able to discover that and eat those bananas. And so I think that's the power of this platform, is to essentially allow and democratize commerce in a very different manner. You know, talking of small merchants, I now want to call on stage, you know, Nikhil Raj, who is a vice president at Walmart, and talk about how, you know, from a global perspective, and you know, he spoke at our event in San Francisco and he's come all the way here. So, you know, really thankful, Nikhil, for that. So can we have you on stage, and love to hear about somebody, you know, from a global perspective, what this could mean for you.
So, it's a pleasure to be here. I know I was not planning to be here for this event. It's a family holiday, and I pinged Naveen and said, hey, want to catch up? He's like, why don't you come and say a few words here? So I was at the San Francisco event. I'm at Walmart Labs in Silicon Valley, and my job is marketing, and specifically marketing tech for Walmart. So whether it's advertising products, whether it's selling our own catalog within, it's mostly US based. So he said, why don't you come and share a couple things about your global perspective? So this is incredible. What I just noticed is just going to revolutionize how commerce is done. It also brings a couple of other interesting questions for us retailers, because in the end, the consumer experience is what this is all about. And as retailers and as consumer product companies, we tend to own that relationship, right? So this is disruptive, highly revolutionary. So the most important thing that I'm sort of wanted to focus again back is it's about the consumer. It makes the user experience, it puts the user experience at the center of the whole thing. When Naveen asked me to come and say a few things, I think like that's what I was thinking about. So what's going on with the users, not only in the Indian context, but also abroad, especially in the US. It's mobile first here, so it's all about the phone. US still is a little bit backwards. We have desktops, if you guys know what that is, laptops. So people are switching context, not only sort of in their life, but also amongst their devices. The phone is increasingly their life, but there are also other ways they transact. And different people are buying different things in different contexts. The example he gave about walking into the store and buying stuff is still about $5 trillion in the US, it's pretty large. And we have a pretty significant share of that type of commerce. So it's important for us to kind of think about that as well as we think about how discovery is enabled. And all of that consumer context switching really means, which is right on, I'm really excited about the hypothesis you guys have, which is intent-led shopping is going to go away. And the reason is the consumer switching context. Whether it's in their devices, whether they're driving home, picking up their kids from whatever class or whatever, going to the park, going to the doctor, you're in different sort of mindsets, and your intent is lost. That's basically what happens. You lose your intent, so you have to be empowered to rediscover it. And I think that's basically the point. We've seen that happen again and again. We've done some pilots with InMobi in some different ways. I don't know if you've directly used Meep, have we? I'm not sure about that. But there's some stuff going on that we're trying to figure this out, but it's very, very clear. Intent is not exactly where it is. Discovery is where it's going to be. So for us, that's really important. So thinking about discovery, as I think about these context switching, you have to have that discovery enabled in whichever context, whether it's in different apps, different devices, websites, search, mobile, all of that has to enable discovery. So that's a pretty important thing for us. And so if you think about what can enable us to do that, I'll go back to the Silicon Valley event. There was a gentleman called Deep Nishar, that is a close friend of InMobi, who said a few things about Meep. I'm going to reiterate that and say why this is an important thing for us too. So the first thing is it makes it targeted for the user. So it is about, many times Naveen said this, we know about what this user wants, right? So it's targeted, it's relevant. It's two things actually, it's a nuance, targeted and relevance are two different things. And the third thing Deep said is it's a beautiful experience, right? I'll sort of extend that a little bit. What does beautiful experience really mean? It means engagement, right? If the experience is fun and good, the consumer will engage. You know, we operate on extraordinarily thin margins, and for us, engagement is a sort of a leading indicator of conversion. Conversion is important to us. We can't just allow engagement to happen from a publisher perspective and not see any of the sales happen. That's really, really important for us. So the consumer engagement leading to consumer conversion, we've already seen good results in our initial work with InMobi that allows us to sort of say, hey, this is real, right? So for us, so taking what Deep said, make it relevant, make it targeted, make it beautiful, drive engagement. And we've seen all of that happening with this platform. So we are really excited, and hopefully, as we build the partnership globally, we'll see more and more sort of partnership with InMobi helping drive our business. And we really hope this happens. Thanks, Naveen.
You know, so the idea, as you could see, was to essentially be able to take Meep and build it into a massive discovery platform, allowing large to small, retailers and merchants to essentially participate and reach out to these billions of users. Look, we think, it should be one of the largest discovery platforms on the planet. We should be able to, we gave you India numbers, we should be able to enable 100 billion shopping sessions across 1 billion plus users every month. And that's what we should be able to scale up to within the next 3 to 4 months. No pressure to the teams who are watching this, but that's pretty much where we think we should get to within a few months. And I think that creates a fairly large platform. So this talked about, we've talked about two big constituents in our approach. One is the consumer himself, very, very important. The second is the retailers. I want to now talk about what does this Meep mean for developers, because they are equally important in this whole equation, because we are creating these Meep zones inside their environment. We are taking real estate from them and creating these stores inside their environment. We don't have real estate of our own. Actually, before I get into that, let me talk about the state of the developer ecosystem in India. And I think the state of the developer ecosystem is somewhat weaker from a monetization perspective. And the reason why it's somewhat weaker is because we don't have a very large amount of gaming dollars that have essentially fueled the the ecosystem globally to essentially have great monetization for developers. So today, when you look at the developer ecosystem, it's somewhat weaker. We did some numbers very interestingly, but if you look at the monetization across the developed markets and the developing markets, and you were to essentially index it to GDP per capita, what you would see here is on a basis, if the US essentially is at a certain level, the developed market is at a certain level where it has reached after about 6 years or so. I would say India is roughly about, again, indexed to the GDP is half its potential today. So you could, in effect, say India should be double of what monetization you see today. You can clearly say it should be more than double of that, what it should look like if you were to look at monetization. And therefore, you don't see a lot of monetization, advertising-based monetization really scale up in India today. And if the world was to essentially, if India was to essentially follow that same path, I would say over the next 5 years or so, India would also reach its own potential, which is, the equivalent indexed, GDP indexed monetization that India should reach to. But I think this is where Meep becomes really powerful. I think what Meep would try to do is to essentially crush that time and probably get the developer monetization to happen over the next 2 years itself. And that, to me, is the power of what the monetization it can do and the power in which it can fuel the developer ecosystem here. And we think it's really important because unless until the developer ecosystem really thrives based on monetization led through fundamentally through advertising, the ecosystem won't really become as large as it should become. And I think we really are big proponents of the developer ecosystem, and we really want to change that in India for sure. Now, clearly, we can drive much higher monetization engagement through these Meep zones. Not just that, but as Nikhil mentioned, each of these Meep zones essentially enable beautiful experiences. One of the biggest complaints of the developers have been is to say, look, we don't really like, we spend so much time making our apps so beautiful, but you guys come in and because of few venture capitalists sitting here and their pressure allows them to essentially make sure that you put ads in it, and then those ads look bad. Why we face that problem? Like they would complain, they would put, but they would complain. I think Meep solves for that massively. The idea, as I said, it's user first. The idea was to essentially say, how can we enable some beautiful experiences with Meep? And we think in that process, we are somewhere helping the Indian app developer ecosystem leapfrog. And we have launched, Meep on, multiple app developers, especially the next generation app developers. And, there are certain examples that we think are beautiful. So let me take you through one quick example. We are creating discovery zones inside Woopler. I think Arjun is sitting here somewhere. It's a beautiful app, Arjun, that you have. But inside the Woopler app, which is a social commerce application, what we are creating is creating a Meep zone that can essentially drive discovery commerce. As a consumer essentially goes through this experience, what it creates inside that developer or Woopler's environment, it creates a Meep zone based on what the consumer is essentially liking and tries to create these set of products because it figures out that this person is like a next door person and creates this complete experience that the consumer can essentially have. Again, making sure that the experience inside apps is beautiful, and it's really, really core to us, by the way. Now let's take this even further, because creating monetization is very, very critical. We'll do a pretty good job at it. A lot of us out here, I think I would argue literally every one of us, directly or indirectly, are essentially looking to get a lot of applications distributed. In this year, we would roughly deliver about 250 million installs as a company. And so we have some experience in doing installs for the world. But I think where we wanted to push the boundary even further was to essentially look at how Meep redefines distribution of apps, how Meep redefines user acquisition significantly, and how when the Meep zones are created across 40,000 apps, it can actually enable much higher amount of app downloads. The core of this is essentially in the fact that Meep would allow users to experience the app before the app is downloaded. One of our biggest challenges, by the way, from the fact that you download the app to the time that you use the app is an 8-step process. Not good enough to scale. Let me show you how sampling of an app content before you download leads to much higher lifetime value. A lot of people spend hundreds of millions of dollars trying to just drive downloads, and then they eventually figure out that spend that they've done has actually gone waste, and they change the strategy to come up with something better. Our idea here is to essentially say, let's leapfrog together. Let's not have a lot of the developers out here spend money on low quality user acquisition, because in the long term it doesn't work. Let's get you to essentially have much higher, most advanced user acquisition approach. So let me show you this particular example. In this particular example, it's a running app that the consumer is essentially looking at. What happens here is as the consumer essentially looks through the app, there is a Meep zone that gets created here. which is something around playlists, because when you run and you do exercise, you need a lot of playlists. If you look at it here, the consumer essentially, goes into that Meep experience and is able to see. That's not a bad one. But the idea here is this playlist was created on the fly based on what the consumer essentially needed and does necessarily listens to, and for a specific workout. You can actually explore the content of the app even before you download the app. And once you do that, your experience is going to be significantly higher. And so in this specific case, it starts to essentially go and look at user acquisition very, very differently. Again, to summarize, I think somewhere what we tried to do with Meep was to essentially create these discovery experiences for consumers which were beautiful and value-adding. We looked at retailers and we decided to essentially create a whole d-commerce platform, discovery commerce platform, and we tried to make it absolutely seamless in partnership with Paytm. And we've created these discovery zones for developers where the monetization could be significantly higher, and if the developers were to participate, the user acquisition could be significantly better. And that's what we did. And we think with all of these things that we have worked on over the past 2 years, we have really pushed the envelope on where mobile advertising should be. We're really, really proud of what we've been able to do. But somewhere, we continued our journey on this. We pushed the envelope even further to a certain extent. And I want to give you a glimpse of what's about to come as you take this advertising platform a little further over the next few months. One of the things that we looked at was to say, look, the discovery experience was all about creating beautiful experiences. Then we clubbed storytelling on top of it. Then we said, look, that's not enough. Still, advertising is very much a monologue. We are still, only one side is talking. Not good enough. You got to create, you got to reimagine these monologues. You can't have monologues anymore. And as you reimagine monologues, what you imagine is you imagine trusted conversations. So we pushed it even further and we said, look, what if advertising was able to have conversations with you? And therefore, at that stage, we gave Meep, which is our platform, a face, an avatar. And so today, we are introducing Meep, an avatar which is expected to essentially have, conversations with you. It may look like a cuddly, cute teddy bear, but the back of it is fairly deep artificial intelligence that's built into it in order for it to have fairly deep, trusted conversations with each one of you. And today, what we are also launching is what we call the Meep button, and that's something that will get launched. And the idea behind the Meep button, and I'll showcase it to you, is to essentially collect the emotional graph of people. Search collected the intent graph, social collected the social graph. We think in commerce and mobile and discovery, what you should connect is the emotional graph of people, because you will get the true sense of the emotions of the people as they go through a variety of things across the world, and therefore the emotional graph becomes really, really important. I'll show you this one last demo on how this effectively comes to life. I'm a sports fan. I think everybody here should be a sports fan. Because we're sitting in India, this example wouldn't necessarily work in San Francisco, but we'll try to make it work here. You're essentially looking at a sports experience here. As you look at this sports experience, comes out Meep in a form of a conversation, and it tries to have the conversation figuring out, again, doesn't take too much insight to figure out that somebody is a Sachin Tendulkar fan, but it does this hard task of figuring out that you're a Sachin Tendulkar fan, and creates, again, a Meep zone based on that. The idea is not, you've seen the Meep zone get created, But the idea is not just the creation of the Meep zone. The idea essentially is what we would call the Meep button here. The Meep button here is not just merely a button which is just created for the heck of it, but there is a lot of intelligence and power behind this button that we hope that as consumers, if people start engaging with it, we'll get a lot more insights. So if you go inside the Meep button, what it does, it creates, it tries to have an emotional conversation with you. This is very primitive, but we are just showcasing it here. And it tries to essentially figure out what is the cumulative emotional connect against that specific product that's essentially available out there. And as you can do that, it creates a very large emotional graph of every consumer as they consume many, many products and look at many, many of these products. So to us, the idea behind Meep has been fairly revolutionary. We started work on this almost 2 years ago. It was one of those things where when we got into doing it, we didn't know where we will end up. It was one of those things where as the team started work on this, we didn't know the end. All we knew was the fact that we wanted people to love advertising because we loved it ourselves. And I was touched by how every one of the engineers in the company was able to essentially take an undefined problem, an uncharted path, and was able to put a stake on the ground and saying, this is what we believe the world would look like if advertising were to become significantly beautiful. And to us, that gave us significant confidence in what we are doing here. I take a lot of pride in what my team was able to pull through. Because what we were able to do over the last 2 years is probably a sign of what I want every other startup in the country to try and do. The attempt of this event was less to showcase what InMobi has done, was also to showcase the power of the people that exist here behind each one of these things. We have some amazing people in the country today, and I think our country is just at the cusp of beginning to make an impact, which not just at a smaller scale, but we believe that impact can be world-changing, certainly India-changing, and I think that's literally the cusp at which we are sitting here today. I want to thank every one of you for coming in today. Look, it means a lot for all of you to be here today because, it shows what every beautiful innovation will attract. It shows that every one of you have this amazing level of trust, amazing level of, aspiration for what small companies like us can especially do to change the world. It means a lot for me, for my founders, for my team. So I want to thank each one of you from the bottom of my heart for coming in here today. And I hope this was useful for you. It was more to showcase what not just InMobi, but what the whole of India can potentially do in the next few years to come. I want to leave you with one last thought, which is I want to thank every one of my partners who actually came up and were willing to work with us at the stage at which they did. They took a lot of bet with us. They took the bet, and I hope in true sense that we'll be able to pay them back for the amount of trust that they've shown in us. I want to leave you with one last video which kind of encapsulates everything that we have done here. But after that, I would love to catch up with you for drinks and dinner. But thank you once again for coming in today.